Tonight, the team from Hong Kong Ghost Files is taking you to Japan to hear a story about a trip. It all began like any ordinary journey. One person, one destination, one experience. The weather was good. The plans went smoothly. Everything seemed perfectly fine. Until certain sounds, certain people, certain moments started to feel not quite right. And then you realize, sometimes you don't choose your destination. The destination is waiting for you. It was Tom's first time traveling to Japan. His destination, Tokyo. As a first-time traveler, he was practical in his planning. Convenient transportation, reasonable price, clean environment. Eventually, he chose a place located in one of the best areas of Ikebukuro, a building with direct access to airport shuttle buses, subway lines and train stations. Even better, right downstairs was a massive 3-story shopping mall that connected directly to the lobby. No need to step outside, no need to brave the weather. It was, by all appearances, incredibly convenient. Everything seemed close to perfect. By the time Tom arrived in Tokyo, it was already 4 p.m. Without wasting a moment, he went straight to check in. The front desk was efficient. The staff smiled warmly. Everything went smoothly. His plan was simple: drop off his luggage in the room, then head back downstairs to explore the shopping mall and enjoy a bit of the Tokyo shopping experience. As he entered the elevator, he noticed another foreigner beside him. They didn't exchange words. The elevator rose silently, its floor indicator blinking steadily, one number at a time. The building stretched all the way up to the 60th floor. At the very top was an observation deck with a panoramic view of the city. On a whim, Tom decided to go check it out first. When the elevator doors opened, his field of vision widened all at once. Tokyo at dusk, glowing in golden light. The city below slowly lit up. One window, one street, one train at a time. Skyscrapers in the distance, tightly packed streets, trains weaving between towers. Tokyo looked massive, yet perfectly in order. A few people stood quietly by the glass, gazing out. One of them caught Tom's eye. A Japanese woman in a traditional kimono, calmly admiring the view. It was Tom's first time seeing someone wearing a traditional kimono in person. There was something quietly delightful about it, a small moment that caught him off guard in the best way. In Japan, tradition and modern life still coexist in subtle but meaningful ways. Even in the year 2025, it's not uncommon for women to wear kimonos to formal events. After taking in the view, Tom headed back down to the shopping mall. He strolled around for a while, letting himself wander. When he passed a vending machine, he casually bought a can of hot corn soup. It was his first time trying it. Sweet, savory, and surprisingly comforting. A small can, but it left him with a quiet kind of happiness. As night fell, the mall lights began to dim. The background music faded. Tom looked at the shopping bags in his hand and felt a sense of contentment. It was time to head back and rest. Back in his room, Tom took a shower and lay down on the bed. The first day of travel had worn him out, both physically and mentally. Later that night, he ate a cup of instant noodles he'd picked up earlier. It was a simple meal, enough to satisfy him for the moment. But not long after, he realized he was still a little hungry. And then a craving hit him. That corn soup from the vending machine earlier. Its sweet, salty warmth was suddenly all he could think about. He remembered seeing vending machines in some of the building's hallways. So he got up, threw on a jacket, and stepped out. Unfortunately, there wasn't one on his floor. He'd have to take the elevator down to another level. He didn't think too much of it. He stepped inside the elevator. As the doors were closing, he noticed he wasn't alone. The same foreign man, wearing a deep green suit, impeccably neat, almost as if it had just been freshly pressed. Tom recognized him immediately. It was the same man who had silently shared the elevator with him earlier that day. Tom gave him a polite nod, but the man didn't respond. Not even a glance. It was as if he didn't see Tom at all. The elevator descended slowly. The silence between them felt unnaturally heavy. When it finally reached the right floor, Tom stepped out quickly. He turned back for a moment. The man was still inside, motionless, no expression, no movement. Tom didn't dwell on it. He walked toward the vending machine ahead. Standing in front of the vending machine, Tom pulled out the only coin he had left and slid it into the slot. However, the machine rejected it immediately. He tried again. Same result. A third time, still no luck. Tom frowned, frustrated. He turned around, planning to head back to his room to find more change. But just as he started to move, a hand suddenly reached past him from the side, holding out a coin. Startled, Tom looked up. It was the same man in the green suit, the one who hadn't left the elevator, who had shown no sign of following him. And yet, here he was, standing right behind him, silent. Tom flinched slightly, caught off guard. The man didn't say a word. He didn't even look at Tom. He simply placed the coin in his palm. Tom hesitated, but eventually accepted it. He inserted the new coin into the machine. This time, it worked. A hot can of corn soup dropped into the tray. Steam rose from the lid, and the smell was immediately comforting. Tom turned around to thank the man, but he was gone. Nowhere to be seen. He slowly drank the soup, letting the warmth settle in his stomach. His nerves began to ease. His body relaxed. Back in the room, he turned off the lights and lay down again. His eyes grew heavy, and sleep began to take hold. But not long after, he woke up. There was a sound. Footsteps. Rhythmic. Steady. Too steady. And not just one person. It sounded like a group, marching, moving in sync, getting louder, getting closer, without pause. Tom frowned and glanced at the clock. 4 a.m. He was annoyed now. Who the hell's walking up and down the hallway at 4 in the morning? He muttered to himself. People trying to sleep here. He got up, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. Under the dim hallway lights, Tom clearly saw 4 figures, all wearing uniforms, moving in unison down the corridor. Their steps weren't casual. They weren't walking. They were marching. Perfect rhythm, repeated motion. It looked like training. Tom froze for a moment. A memory surfaced. A Japanese documentary he'd watched not long ago. Some companies in Japan made their employees do morning exercises before work. Maybe this was something like that. Could be hotel staff, he thought to himself. Some kind of routine drill before their shift. At 4 a.m., in the middle of a hallway? It didn't make sense. Tom opened the door, ready to complain. But the hallway was empty. No footsteps, no uniforms, not even a sound. He stepped out, walked a little farther, looked down the hall. Nothing. And then, the door behind him swung shut. Tom stood there, frozen for a few seconds. He'd forgotten to take the key. With no other choice, he headed to the lobby to request a new room card. While waiting for the elevator, he saw someone walking toward him. A woman in a kimono. She passed by slowly, nodding and smiling softly as she went. The figure felt familiar, almost too familiar. Wasn't that the same woman he saw at the observation deck earlier that day? But he couldn't be sure. It was a fleeting image, there, and then gone. Once he reached the lobby, Tom explained the lost key to the front desk and mentioned the marching sounds he'd heard in the hallway around 4 a.m. The staff paused for a brief moment, then bowed deeply and apologized. "We're sorry for the inconvenience," they said. "We will inform management immediately." Tom stared at them. His mind was still trying to make sense of it all. But their apology felt genuine, and he didn't press any further. He took the replacement key and headed back to his room, planning to get some sleep. The next morning, Tom set out as planned. Today's destination, Shibuya. Tom arrived at Shibuya's iconic Scramble Crossing and waited for the light to turn green. And just then, in the crowd across the street, he spotted a familiar face. He squinted to be sure. It was his friend from Hong Kong. They greeted each other in surprise, laughing after a brief moment of disbelief. It turned out his friend was also traveling alone in Tokyo. And since fate had brought them together, they decided to grab dinner. Over the meal, the friend casually asked where Tom was staying. Without thinking much, Tom answered honestly, "Sunshine City Prince Hotel. Super convenient. There's a shopping mall right downstairs." His friend paused, then gave him a look. "You're staying there? You're pretty brave." Tom blinked. "Why?" The friend's voice dropped slightly. "You know that place used to be a military prison after World War II?" Tom didn't respond. The U.S. military held war criminals there. Not just held. It was also where executions took place. There are stories that major war criminals, including Hideki Tojo, were executed right there. That's why people say the place is haunted. There have been reports of soldiers, men in uniform, wandering the halls. But who knows, right? Could just be an urban legend. He chuckled and kept eating, brushing it off like a ghost story told over drinks. But Tom didn't laugh. He sat up straighter. His palms began to sweat. In his mind, the scenes from the night before replayed. The synchronized footsteps in the hallway, the vanished figures, the man in the green suit, appearing and disappearing without a sound. But he didn't say a word. Not one. All the while his friend was speaking, Tom kept nodding quietly. But his eyes were fixed on his phone. He was already searching for a different hotel. After dinner, Tom didn't waste another second. He returned straight to the building, walked through the lobby without slowing down, and went directly to the elevators. He had made up his mind. He was leaving tonight. The elevator doors opened. Tom stepped inside and pressed the button for his floor. His finger held down on it, hard. The doors closed slowly. The digital floor indicator began counting upward. Tom stared at it, unblinking. His heart was racing. His palms were wet with sweat. Halfway up, the elevator stopped. The doors slid open, and someone stepped inside. It was him, the man in the green suit. Expressionless, silent. Tom froze. One thought echoed in his mind: get out. He moved quickly, trying to step out, but the doors had already closed. Too late. The elevator began moving again. The silence was unbearable. So still, it drowned out even the sound of breathing. Tom didn't look at the man. He kept his eyes forward, forcing himself to stay calm. Finally, his floor. The second the doors opened, Tom practically ran out. He reached his room, fumbled with the key, threw the door open, and immediately began packing. It took less than 5 minutes. He didn't even glance at the bed, just grabbed everything, zipped the bags, and rushed out again. Back in the hallway, waiting for the elevator, he saw her again. The woman in the kimono. Same posture. Same slow, graceful steps. Getting closer. Tom tried to steady his thoughts. She's probably just another guest. He told himself. She's not in uniform, just a kimono. Probably nothing strange. When he looked into her face, there was nothing there. No reaction. No expression. Closer and closer, until she passed through him. A wave of cold swept straight down his spine. Tom didn't dare turn around. Thankfully, the elevator arrived at that exact moment. He bolted inside and slammed the button for the lobby. As the elevator descended, his heart was still pounding. His forehead was drenched in sweat. The moment the doors opened, Tom rushed straight to the front desk. He demanded to check out immediately. In panicked English, he tried to explain everything. The strange figure last night, the marching sounds in the hallway, the door that slammed shut on its own. But the staff simply kept bowing, nodding, smiling, and repeating the same word. Sorry. It was as if they didn't understand, or didn't want to. Tom didn't push further. He just wanted to leave. He finished the checkout process, grabbed his suitcase, and walked out the front doors. He flagged down a taxi. But before getting in, he turned around just once. Through the glass doors of the lobby, he saw her, the woman in the kimono, standing exactly where she'd been, smiling gently, bowing, as if she were saying goodbye. Afterward, the Hong Kong Ghost Files team did some research into the history of the place where Tom stayed. Before the Sunshine City Prince Hotel was ever built, this land wasn't just any ordinary plot. It was once the site of Sugamo Prison. Established in 1895, Sugamo was one of Japan's modern-era prisons. After World War II, it was taken over by U.S. forces and became a detention center specifically for war criminals. Several Class A war criminals, including Hideki Tojo himself, were executed right here. In 1971, Sugamo Prison was demolished, and in its place, a commercial complex and the current building were erected. Some say that the building's all white, rectangular exterior, resembles a massive gravestone when viewed from afar. And the story you've just heard is only one of many that have been quietly passed around for decades.